Mark, in your experience, what are the best recruiters doing differently to stand out and close more business?
I love that question, Brad, because the challenge for many recruitment businesses is that they are not differentiated. Clients can't see any obvious difference from one provider to the next. And so they're likely going to default to price, right? If they can't distinguish between what you do versus what your competitors are doing. So I think one of the key shifts that recruiting businesses and individual recruiters need to make is to stop selling recruitment. Now, I don't know if that sounds strange, but if you think of the way that most recruiters learn to sell, at least the way that I was taught when I was a recruiter, is, you understand what the client's looking for, what their hiring needs are, and then you tell them that, why you're wonderful. And then you basically pitch that you're going to help them to hire this person and you can do it better than anyone else. Okay. The problem is that's not really solving the problem for the client. So recruiters need to make the shift from selling recruitment to solving problems and really selling a solution. Okay. So I guess my question for the audience is, do you have a signature solution? And what I mean by that is you're able to package your process in a way that is completely unique. Ideally, you would have a visual, even a visual diagram that shows what your solution looks like, what problems it solves for the client, and that you could even trademark if you wanted to. So as an example, I've just done this exercise recently for our business, which is I've applied to trademark the recruitment freedom flywheel. Okay. And I've got a diagram that goes with it, which has 6 pillars. So it looks like a pie chart, and it's got 6 pillars, which are clients, candidates, team, operations, strategy, and marketing. And the idea is that every recruitment business could have their own intellectual property, could have their own signature solution. But the problem is we just don't take time to actually think about it, step back from the day-to-day grind of running a recruitment business and really think about how can we package what we do and almost productize it. So that's completely unique in the marketplace. And that also means really doing a deep dive on how can we differentiate our solution from what other people are doing, and in a way, and it has to satisfy 3 criteria, Brad. So the litmus test, if you like, or the acid test is, number 1, is it truly unique? Okay. And a lot of recruiters struggle with coming up with something that's unique because they fall into the trap of thinking, well, we all do the same thing. I just need to build a better relationship or be more likable or, have a whatever. They're selling more in relationship, which obviously relationship's important, but your buyer is only one stakeholder, right? Your hiring manager or your TA leader, whoever you're selling to, is one of a number of stakeholders. And you might build a really nice rapport with that one person, but then they're going to take your offer and take it back to the business and the other decision makers, whether that's the CEO, the CFO, the head of purchasing or whatever. And all of your articulate, sales pitch is going to be boiled down and lost. Most of it's going to be lost, right, in translation. Right. So we need to make it easy for them to explain to other, stakeholders why they want to go with you. So it has to be truly unique. And number 2, it has to be beneficial, right? It's not enough for it to be different. It has to be something they actually value. And, we need to be able to articulate that succinctly and clearly to our customers. That was maybe a long-winded answer, but do you have any questions about that?
I like long-winded answers, and that's okay. I do have questions. Why do you think the majority of recruiters or recruitment firms don't have that signature process? Whether it's trademarked or not, why do we fall into the commodity gap? Yeah,
great question. I think there's a couple of things. One is just the lack of awareness that that's important. And so we may feel frustrated that we're pitching but not converting. Or maybe, here's the thing. A lot of conversion problems are actually a top of funnel problem. And what I mean by that is, if someone is just doing, and I mean just like if your model is contingency and you have a very competitive rate and you're competing on price, it's pretty easy to win business, right? You should win almost every pitch that you go on, because you're essentially saying, let me show you some resumes. And if you don't love these candidates and they're not better to the other ones that you're already seeing from other recruiters or from your own efforts, then you don't need to pay us anything, right? It's pretty easy to get a client to say yes to that. But if what you're selling is you want money up front and actually you charge a premium fee, suddenly, your conversion rate on the surface is going to look like you're not winning a lot of business. But here's the thing. That means you're just raising the bar in terms of who you say no to or who you want to partner with. Because I think if you want to not be treated as a commodity, then you need to position yourself as a real business partner. But what that also means is you can't just say yes to everything that crosses your path. We need to have a strategy for building market awareness and driving top of funnel. So you have enough conversations that you can partner with the ones that make the most sense for you.
I think that's a big challenge, right? When business is down and you're sort of grasping at straws, I think it makes sense, presumably, to take any business that you can get. I'm with you, though. The challenge in doing so dilutes the business, dilutes what your core competencies are, probably stresses out your team a heck of a lot because they can't fill the roles that you've now sold or the orders that you now have. Yeah. So it creates more stress and friction among the team than opportunity among the team.
Yeah, 100%. And so to me, obviously, we need to pay the bills and, we need to be able to make money. So I'm not saying, don't pick up whatever business you can. However, we really need to think carefully about, does this opportunity, is it a match for the type of work that we do best and the types of clients that we perform best for and that we most enjoy working with? Because if not, we should seriously consider reallocating the time that we would have spent serving that client or working that order, which may or may not pay off anyway, and reallocate that to more marketing and business development.
Hey, it's Brad taking a quick break to tell you about my friends at Benefits in a Card. Let's face it, traditional benefits don't work for temporary employees. They're expensive, confusing, and often go unused. That's where Benefits in a Card comes in. For 30 years, they've delivered benefit plans tailored to the staffing industry. With over 140 unique plans offering immediate coverage and unique perks, including free RX, they help reduce turnover, improve ACA compliance, and give your workforce something to feel good about. Want to give your staffing firm a real edge? Start with my friends at Benefits in a Card. To learn more, visit benefitsinacard.com. That's benefitsinacard.com. All right, let's get back to the show. Yeah, when you think about filling the top of the funnel, I like the thought of working more strategically with the people that we want to get business from, right? So filling the top of the funnel with the right people, right?
Exactly.
If you are in an executive search in one very specific vertical, getting more business from that specific demo makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
Mark, how do the best recruiters fill that funnel? What are you seeing works well from a marketing standpoint or just from an outreach standpoint?
So I speak to a lot of recruiters who are doing things the same way that they've always done them and finding diminishing returns. And maybe it used to work
silly
really
how that
well
works,
for them.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. And so people who maybe used to be a big biller and now they're working harder, but for less money. Mm-hmm. And I think if you are doing the same things in 2025, like you're doing everything the same as you did in 2024, then there's something wrong. Okay. So I want to challenge our listeners to, constantly innovate, iterate, experiment, because that's what I see top recruiters doing is that, yes, they're obviously doubling down on things that are working. And, the relationships and the strategies that have served them well. If they're still working, then fantastic. But they're not resting on their laurels or expecting that they can just keep rinse and repeat the same old things they did before. They're always looking to level up. They're putting themselves through training. They're always open to learning. They're trying new tools. And I think that's the key difference to the recruiters that consistently continue to outperform their peers is they have that mindset of, constant improvement. They're never satisfied. They're always learning. We can go into specific tactics and strategies, but I think that mindset it underpins everything else.
Yeah, you've sort of alluded to twice now the thought of working more in the business than on the business. And I think when you're in the day-to-day, it's easy to just trudge through it, right? You're working in the business. You're working on the orders you actually have. You're trying to find the right candidates. You're trying to recruit. You're working in the day-to-day, and you're not necessarily working on how you can improve as an individual or how you can improve the business. And I think it's critical that we do that. And Mark, I go to probably 5 or 6 conferences a year. I've seen diminishing numbers at industry conferences. Going back to pre-COVID to what I'm seeing now in 2025, there are presumably less individuals learning in person. Why do you think, and maybe that's a small sample size, and I know from show numbers and I know from other podcasts that I pay attention to, people are still learning in the industry, but why do you think it's so difficult for recruiters or individuals in this space to consistently work to level up their skills?
It's a good question. I don't know if people are. I would think of this differently. I think it's an overwhelm issue. I think there's now so much information, right? So like previously conferences were the main source of information, right? But now there's many more conferences. There's more virtual learning opportunities. There's more podcasts and so on. So I don't think necessarily that people are doing less learning, but I think almost the problem is now it's overwhelm, and it's there's so many things people could do that they've heard they listen to different podcasts, they read, posts on LinkedIn, and they'll be like, oh, should I start a podcast, or should I be posting on LinkedIn every day, or should I, do more automated sequences, or, should I go to in-person events for my industry? Should I cold call? They're just their head is spinning. And the reality is that all of those things do work. And so that's the other challenge is, you could do any number of things to drive, new business and acquire clients. So it's deciding on the right things and then implementing them in the correct order. So I think that could be the issue, is overwhelm. And as you say, people are already wearing many hats, spinning all the plates, grinding it out. And so the idea of taking on a new strategy and figuring it out, implementing it, people just kind of revert to what they already know.
I think overwhelm's incredibly real. And you alluded to LinkedIn, you alluded to podcasts, you alluded to different conferences. I just on this show this year have had probably 10 to 15 different sales coaches on the show. So if anybody is listening religiously to this show, where do you get started? In your mind, and I agree, they're all right. All of these sales coaches and sales strategies work, but I can understand, and I can certainly understand the analysis paralysis of where do I get started when I have all of this information? So Mark, when you're coaching people or you're talking to recruiters, where do you often say that people should get started when evaluating something like that?
So I think the number one most important thing is you can't do everything at once. And so focus is a superpower. And so we need to just attack this one step at a time. And so we have a 9-step client acquisition accelerator roadmap. And so there's 3 phases, and I can go into as much or as little detail as you want here. But the idea is to go from feast and famine to consistent clients. And there's sort of like a journey with multiple milestones along the way. So there's nine milestones. But to me, everything's, and that's just on the outbound business development side, by the way. I know that you guys at Haley Marketing are experts in marketing and in driving inbound business.
Right.
And to me, that is equally important. These two go hand in hand because, trying to do outbound when you have no brand and nobody knows who you are is really tough to get a response and to get people to engage with you. Likewise, marketing is something that you need to invest in over the long run, and it has a compound effect, right? So we really need to do these two things together. And often, like, marketing will generate interest, but that doesn't necessarily lead to appointments. So there's that sales effort that's required to turn, like, someone who's engaging with your brand, for example, into a qualified appointment. So I think these are two equally important parts, but let me just focus on the outbound,
Sure.
For now. And if you want to talk marketing, we can do that as well. So the number one step before you can do anything regarding, like, outbound sequences, messaging people on LinkedIn, sending emails, or any of that stuff, is defining or redefining your market niche, I think. And this is true for marketing as well. Whether you're going to leverage marketing strategies or sales and business development strategies, you need to know who your audience is, right? You need to get super clear on what's my total addressable market? What are the things they all have in common? Like, who is that ideal client profile? We call it an avatar, but some people call it ICP, right? The ideal client profile. What are their pain points? What are they trying to achieve? What are the trends and challenges that they're, in their world? And let me go really deep on that to truly understand from their point of view, what they're facing and what they're trying to accomplish day to day before you even, start putting messaging together. I think that's where it all starts. Does that make sense to you, Brad?
Makes total sense to me. And I could not agree more. I think in identifying target audience, the analogy that I paint every now and again is the difference between the audience that reads something like Rolling Stone magazine and somebody that reads Better Homes and Gardens. They're two very different audiences that are into very different media. And if you are trying to address either of those markets and either of those audiences, you need very deliberate messaging to do so.
Yes.
And I see the challenge from the staffing and recruiting industry quite a bit of having generic messaging that tries to hit everybody. Exactly. And when you try to reach everybody, you reach nobody. So
100%.
you have me 100%, Mark. So thinking through your ICP, I also like calling it an avatar. Yeah. The deeper you can get with that, the better. Who am I trying to reach? Name the person. It's Mark, and this is what Mark is into. Mark is a hiring manager in this role. This is what he does. This is what keeps him up at night. This is what he does on the weekends. This is everything about Mark, our avatar, our ICP. So when you are putting that marketing messaging into play, if it doesn't hit Mark, it's not aligned. And we got to go back to the drawing board.
100%. Exactly. So that whole first phase of the journey really goes from, it's market mastery. It goes from being generalist to specialist. And so defining that market niche, understanding your ideal client avatar, and then sort of mapping out that market. But even to the point of, so it is helpful to know who everybody is, identify every single potential client in your ecosystem. But then I would want to take that one step further and identify your dream 100. And what that means is, who are your best buyers, the ones that represent the most exciting opportunity, the ones that you would really love to partner with, because rather than have a mass campaign that tries to reach everybody, even with everybody in your market, you can do that. And depending on how big your total addressable market is, but for most people, that's overwhelming to start with. So let's begin by just zeroing in on 100 is a nominal amount. It could be 50, it could be 38, it could be 76. Doesn't really matter.
We suggest 100 too. So I like 100. We suggest 100 as well.
Great. Okay, perfect. So who are the 100 clients that, because then when you go to the next step, which is all about messaging and crafting your messaging, you know exactly who you're trying to reach, what keeps them awake at night, as you said. And also we can even personalize the messaging to each recipient because it's not a huge number. So your messaging then becomes so much more targeted and relevant that your response rate is going to be much greater.
Yeah, I cannot speak more highly of what I consider personalized automation. So if you are sending at scale, how can you have those variable fields that appear personalized? Mark, when we met at NAPS, I don't think I talked about this on stage, but there's an example that I share regularly from GNC, which is a local supplement company here in Buffalo on the state side. I don't shop with them anymore because I'm loyal to a different brand now. But at one point, I had purchased something from their store, and the typical supplement will run you about 30 days, right? You have 30 servings in there. It was like 25 days out. I got a pamphlet in the mail. And when I opened it up, it was the two products that I had bought down to the right flavor that I had just bought the month prior and a 20% coupon on that. And it said, Brad, we know you're running out soon. Come back in, 20% off. Down to the flavor. And somebody at GNC didn't punch in those codes and do all of that. But that personalized automation is what drives me back. It's not to just say, hey, come back and come buy something. It's very, very deliberate. So I love every chance that you can get to personalize the marketing messaging that you're deploying to a prospect.
Yes.
I'm all for it. And Mark, to your point, when you have a Dream 100 list, that becomes much more manageable.
Definitely. And I love personalization as well. I would say that segmentation trumps personalization. And what I mean by that is if you're sending a sequence to an ICP that are all share this like same profile, same problem, same like demographics, etc. Even if it's not personalized to each recipient, it feels personalized and relevant to the person. Like almost you read their mind, you understand what they're going through. But then the next level up from that is when you do have that level of personalization. So I've just hired someone in my team who's a go-to-market engineer. And what that means is, so his job, he's kind of a blend between being super techie and he's a clay expert and he understands all the automation tools out there, but he's also very commercial. He understands sales and marketing, and he's helping us to scale our cold outreach, first of all, but then he's going to be building AI agents for us using N8N and stuff like that to help us be more efficient as a business. But I'm really excited about the opportunity of personalization. But if you personalize a message that and you don't really understand your ICP, it's going to fail. It's not enough by itself.
Where do we go from there? So I believe you alluded to a 9-step process. Maybe I got that number wrong.
So
but
then
after
it's
messaging,
about
where do we go?
Your outreach. So I like to start on LinkedIn. Now, ideally, if a multi-channel outreach strategy across, LinkedIn, email, phone, and then hopefully you're leveraging video and or voice notes as well, and maybe even direct mail. And then if you want to be really sexy, you could get Haley Marketing to help you also, track who's landing on your website or who's responding to different messages and then retarget them. And then you've got ads showing up for those people as well. And it seems like you're everywhere, right? That would be the ultimate play. But, for most small businesses, that's just like that feels like too big a chunk at once. So we start with LinkedIn because recruiters are comfortable in LinkedIn. They understand the platform. So that is building your brand on LinkedIn, making sure your profile is going to be attractive to your target audience, making sure you're posting content consistently so that you're positioned as an expert and you're adding value. And then you're reaching out. Ideally, on an automated basis, you're connecting with your ideal clients and you're following up in DMs to try and get a response back, at which stage it goes from being automated to being manual, but you're then going to convert those, people who are responding to your messages into telephone appointments or Zoom or Teams appointments. So that's usually the next chunk. And then we go to email because email's harder, I think, to master. And so many people are doing it like wrong and it doesn't, maybe they've tried it and it doesn't work because you can't just blast out cold emails willy-nilly and expect a response. That's definitely not going to work. You have to have the infrastructure set up. You have to have multiple domains. You have to be, really sending small numbers per day from each domain. You have to have already got the personalization and the segmentation and the messaging, tuned in. But then cold email can work. It also depends on the size of your TAM. If you have a really small total addressable market, I'd say I wouldn't even bother with cold email. But if you have enough, if you have in the thousands of prospects, then it's definitely worth trying. So that next phase is about going from kind of manual, one at a time, outreach to being personalized outreach at scale. So that's phase 2. And then the final phase is about converting those appointments into those partner, level clients. So that's actually circles right back to where we started, Brad, which is number 1, your signature solution. So differentiate your offering, package it. Then the next step is, perfect pitch. It's how you, like your pitch decks, your proposal documents, how you actually conduct the, discovery call. And then, what is your sales process? Like, what are the steps in your sales process to go from the initial inquiry to they've signed the contract? And then the final is really turning those one-off, transactions into ongoing partnerships with clients. Ideally, they pay you a monthly retainer, or at least they give you regular repeat business.
Hey, it's Brad taking a short break to tell you about an offer exclusive to listeners of Take the Stage. 30 minutes of strategic marketing consultation with me, completely free. Hey, whether you're looking to drive more sales or more job applications, I want to help. Visit bit.ly/stage offer. Pick a time that works best for you. That's it. Again, whether you want to drive more applications or more job orders, I want to help. That's bit.ly/stage offer. All right, let's get back to the show.
I'm sitting here thinking about the owner who's thinking, I can't afford to do all of this. And I'm also marinating on thought of, you can't afford not to do all of this, right? We're seeing how difficult the industry is becoming, how hard it is to sell recruiting services, how congested the space is getting, how, I don't want to say generic the industry is getting, but how commoditized the industry is getting, because anybody with a phone can now be a recruiter, right? And it makes it difficult for the firms that have built a strong reputation. This system works for me because it is creating that ecosystem of messaging where wherever I look, the prospect, I'm getting messaging and messages from that specific recruiting firm. We don't know how people are going to respond to our messages. We don't know if they're going to respond to ads or emails or phone calls or in-mails, whatever it is. So we need to be multi-channel because we want to be where they want to be active and listening, put safely. So Mark, it makes total sense to me. And again, I think it plays on the thought of we can't afford to not be doing this in 2025 because the playbook has changed. The landscape has changed. With AI and automation and just the ease of becoming a recruiter, leveling the playing field for just about anybody, we need to make sure we're doing everything we can to stand out and close more business.
Absolutely. You nailed it. Like the way I see it, because I feel like there's a lot of uncertainty in the market right now. And recruiters are worried about, exactly. Recruiters are worried about AI, and, some clients are trying to replace even their internal recruiters with, technology. But look, you can't control any of that. You can't control the economy. You can't control the labor market or the decisions of individual companies, whether they're, investing in growing headcount, whether they're laying people off. Nobody can, with accurately predict the impact of AI over the next 3 years. All we can really control is like my own mindset. What am I going to focus on? What actions can I take? What decisions can I make? So I think if you are investing in yourself, focusing on being proactive and thinking, how can I be, one of the recruiters that is leveraging AI and automation rather than being left behind, I think that is a great start. But again, even that feels overwhelming. So it's a question of thinking this isn't something that is going to happen overnight. This is an ongoing commitment to never-ending improvement, to learning, development, and it's a marathon, not a sprint. So start running around the block, right? And then build up to 5K, and then maybe you feel ready for a 10K. And then, you your fitness will improve and your ability to take on more will increase over time. Also, as you start getting results and your revenue increases, you can reinvest in hiring more team members and working with, partners like Haley Marketing to accelerate that whole process. And then you've got momentum on your side, but you need to start somewhere. So, take that first step.
Interesting that you mentioned the marathon analogy. I don't know if we spoke about it at NAPS, but I ran my first marathon in May.
Awesome.
And more importantly, I'm training now for 2 halves in October. And I ran 11 miles at time of recording yesterday. I know I can run 13, so now it's a matter of, well, how fast can I do it, right? And where I'm going with this is I'm using a running system that I found from a coach paired with sort of obsessing over data because of the watch that I wear, paired with ChatGPT to basically say, listen, coach me through this. Here's my times. Here's the splits. Here's the goal. Here's what we're trying to do. And Mark, just this past weekend, I shared data from my last run. And I said, I got to ChatGPT, my coach. I said, I got to be honest, I don't think we're going to hit the goal. I don't feel comfortable in what I'm running now and what I think I can run in 3 months. And the almighty Coach GPT said, you're right. You can't run it now, but we're laying the framework for that run. We're not running that race today. And I think what I got wrong is putting myself in October instead of realizing that I'm still in August and we still have months to work towards this. And I also think that that's what the industry gets wrong consistently. It's thinking, okay, Mark and Brad are talking about this 30-page system of PPC ads and email and in-mail and phone calls and all of this. And we're not saying you need to do all of that, but you do need to lay the framework to being better today so that you can get to a point where 6 to 12 months from now, we're not living like we are today. And we're living in a situation where we have much more opportunity and clients in the pipeline and individuals in the pipeline.
I love that. And we should compare notes offline because I was playing with ChatGPT yesterday to create a running coach, but maybe you've already done the hard work for me. So
I have so it's a running. It's I started this conversation and folder in GPT and structure back in almost a year ago. And what I love about it is it knows every single run. It knows nutrition. It knows my sleep. It knows recovery. It knows all of the data that I'm feeding to it so that each next run is dictated based on what I've done the week prior.
Love that.
And now I obsess over data, Mark. So, I mean, I wear a Whoop that tracks everything that I need. After the run, I wear a Garmin. When I'm running, Whoop will track my workouts differently. Yeah. So, but to bring this back to recruiting, it's knowing where I want to go and knowing that, okay, come October, this is the goal. When we start running on October 4th, we want to get to the finish line in a certain time. And again, I can't do that right now. And it's nice to have somebody, even if it's Coach GPT, say, listen, call it Coach GPT, I think it's better. Listen, you're right. You can't do it today, but we're laying the framework for that run in October. And that's what we need to remember. It's the consistency, not necessarily the sprint that's going to get us there.
Love that. That's cool.
Mark, you talk a lot about feast and famine in the recruiting landscape. Walk us through that and walk us through how we get to this sort of proverbial light at the end of the tunnel where we're not living in this sort of swing state.
Yeah, great. Speaking of light at the end of the tunnel, I read a LinkedIn post by a friend of mine who's been on the podcast, actually. His name is Alex. Let me just make sure I don't mess up his last name here. Alex Elliott is worth following on LinkedIn. But he gave the analogy that recruitment is hard. And the problem is that when you're in the tunnel is curved. And so even though there is light at the end of the tunnel, you can't see it until you're like past the halfway point in this tunnel. So I think a lot of us, when we're running a business as well, whether you're running a desk or a business or you have a big recruiting firm, but you're trying to achieve a new goal that you've not achieved before, you're in the dark. It feels like there's no light at the end of the tunnel, but if you just keep going, then the light will appear. I think the reason for the feast and famine is a couple things. One, you have people trying to do too much themselves. Okay. And, we only have so many hours in the day and we only have so much bandwidth available. So, classically, that's the full desk recruiter biller who is getting clients, and then they get a new order, and then they go and try and recruit candidates. And then while they're recruiting candidates, then they stop selling, and then the pipeline dries up. We've all seen that, that seesaw effect.
Yep.
But even at a firm level, I see that happening as well, where it's very, there's not consistent enough pipeline. And so 1 month we'll have a great month. We'll close, however many placements. The next month, not as great. And it just is all over the place. We don't know where our next search mandate is coming from. Yeah. And so the key is, number one, as an owner, we need to make sure that you're not trying to do everything yourself and spreading yourself too thin. You do need support. So whether that and having a team around you, because we're not all good at everything either. At least I definitely am not. I'm good at a few things, and then I suck at a lot. The list of things I suck at is much bigger than the list of things that I'm really good at. Yeah. And then there's also, circling back to what we talked about earlier, the opportunity of AI and automation to do a lot of the heavy lifting for you, and also, accelerate workflows, make you more efficient. So I think it's a combination of leveraging talent as well as technology.
I would agree. That swinging pendulum, that seesaw, I see it regularly in the industry. And I have said in the talk that I give that it's not a comment of candidates or clients. And when we're thinking about marketing, it's, well, what's your biggest challenge right now? It's not candidates or clients. It's an and comment. We need both. We need to put great people to work in great opportunities. And to do that, we need orders and we need candidates in the pipeline. We need both. And I think the best staffing and recruiting firms understand that. And I love the feast-or-famine methodology and the thought of, listen, if we are constantly working towards both, and we know what's down the line, then the feast should outweigh the famine quite often.
Exactly. Do you know what scares people actually is, I had this with a client who's just done phenomenally over the last year, and she's gone from like almost scratch to billing almost $1 million a year. And her business development and marketing was working so well. She kept, every time I'd speak to her, she'd say, Mark, we've just won 3 new clients. They're all retained. I think we should stop marketing now. And I'm like, or she'd ask me the question. She knew what I was going to say. She'd be like, should we stop marketing and just focus on our clients? And I'm like, what do you think? And she's like, we should probably keep doing marketing and business development. I'm like, yep. Because, it just means we need to improve our processes, hire more team members, get better at delivery, build those systems, leverage technology in order to meet the growing demand. Because as soon as you fall into the trap of, oh, we've got enough business, we're going to stop, then that's just an absolute recipe for disaster, because there is no guarantee that the level of business that you're getting today is just going to continue. We cannot take that for granted that it's going to continue into the future. So you never, ever, ever stop marketing and business development.
Why do you think the industry feels that way, that when marketing is going well, it can be turned off? And the analogy that I want to paint is, we wouldn't do that with our diet, right? If you want to lose 20 pounds and you finally get to that number that you've been targeting, you wouldn't just say, okay, I got there, let's go out for, 6 beers and some wings. Exactly. And just, I did it. Or, if you have a financial goal, you want to save some money. Okay, great. I did it. Now let's go spend it all. We don't do that in our personal lives, but from a business standpoint.
But people do though, Brad. The reality is people do, they exercise or watch their diet until they get comfortable. And then they're like, okay, I'm here. I'm good now. Right. And they stop the habits that got them there in the first place. That's the hedonic treadmill,
right? That's the happiness trap of, I'll be happy when you finally get to that point. You think you'll be happier and you realize you're not at all happier than when you were previously. Right. And it's just this hamster wheel of constantly chasing.
Yeah. Yeah, we see it all the time with clients who like they're at this level of billings and they want to get here, and then we help them get here, and then they're like, okay, I'm good. Now I can sort of, I can relax. And what happens inevitably, they're going to go back down. But actually, I think there's also a really kind of a good reason for why they're reluctant to take on businesses. If they're very quality oriented, they really care about doing a great job for their customers. They're worried that if they get too busy, their quality will suffer. And obviously that would not be acceptable. So we need to find a way of maintaining and even continuously improving quality, candidate experience, client experience while we're growing. So again, it's like it's not a either or, it's an and conversation. How do we continue to grow the number of clients and orders we're getting and can consistently increase the client and candidate experience?
Which comes back to working on the business, not just in the business, which comes back to having strategic visions, comes back to having strategic meetings and quarterlies and annuals and saying, okay, yeah, we are going to break some processes. We should, right? If we only have one client, we are going to act very different than if we have 10 or 100. And the processes that we had with one client need to change and evolve. And yeah, we're going to break a few things along the way. And that's just a growing pain. Right. As long as the growing pains get repaired, presumably, everything will be okay.
Yeah.
But again, I think that comes back to working on the business and not just in it.
Yeah. Exactly. I'm going to ask you, do you have a formula for, because that's hard, right? We all can find that challenging, is carving out the time. I call it CEO time. Like, when are you going to step back and actually work on the business, be strategic, versus just the hamster wheel time of, grinding away. Do you have a formula for how much like time you dedicate to working on versus in the business?
I don't, and I think, can I speak personally? Not necessarily Haley Marketing. My time to work on what it is that I'm doing, whether it's at Haley Marketing or professionally, happens outside of hours. I run a lot. I try to work out an hour a day. I do have 2 young kids, so my time is very segmented, right? When I'm a dad, I'm a dad. When I'm running, I try to lock in, but my mind wanders, right? I had a 2-hour run this weekend, and that solitude I find a lot of peace in, but I also find a lot of strategic thinking during. Coming out of those runs are a lot of really good ideas. Mark, specifically, the talk that I gave at NAPS, what the best recruiters are doing, what the best recruitment firms do differently, came out of a run where I had, I think it was a 3-hour run that day, and the wheel was turning. So I think for owners, to bring this full circle, owners and even individuals in the space that are listening, it's knowing when you're creatively thinking and capitalizing on it. If you cannot be creative and think about how can I get better while sitting at your desk, get up and leave. No one is chaining you there. If you have your best ideas while you're sitting, staring at the water, staring at a lake, while you're running, while you're working out, do more of that. Do more of the things that get you fired up.
Absolutely.
And then come back to the setting that you need to be in. I think we live in a world where as long as you have a phone, you can pretty much do 90% of the job. So do it where you're productive and where your wheels are turning, right? So for me, Mark, I think my best ideas come long drives where if I'm alone, if I get the chance, maybe the kids are sleeping in the back seat and things are quiet for a minute. I actually love working later at night, I will say, because again, it's quiet and it's peaceful. I love getting up early and putting in some hours and some creative thought then. And I love long runs because I know if I'm at the gym and I'm working out, people still have a way to get me, right? Your phone in between sets, whatever, you're looking at it, you don't want to, but you do. When you're running, you can't run in text. You can't run and scroll Facebook. You can't run and scroll Instagram. So you have the time to let your mind wander. And when your mind does wander, I think it helps the run. So super, super long-winded answer. I don't have the formula, but I know what works well for me. And I know what helps me tick. And I think if I could be of any value to the listener, it's realizing what works for you.
For sure, 100%. So I agree. Like when I'm doing that long run, that is when I get a lot of my best ideas for sure. And then in terms of but sometimes you need to be at your desk to like like actually write stuff, build those plans and so on. And do the stuff like the implementation of the strategy. So what we tell our clients is if you can carve out 4 to 5 hours a week to work on the business and implement the stuff that we're doing together, then you're going to make consistent progress, because, you hold the whole rest of the week just to do everything else that you normally do. But you're just, whether that's 1 hour a day, like first thing in the morning or in the evening when the kids are in bed, or whether it's like, 2 half day, like 2 2-hour blocks or whatever. Yeah. I think that's enough to move the needle.
I like that formula. I think if you give yourself an hour a day to focus on what you want to focus on, right? Yeah. And in this case, it's working on the business. I like that. I like that mentality a lot. I've consulted with hundreds of staffing firms over the last year. And if you're anything like the owners or sales leaders I'm talking to, you're probably asking the same 2 questions. How do we open more doors to get more conversations? And how do we close more deals? Here's the good news. I've seen what works. And right now we're making it even easier to boost your lead generation without blowing your budget. For a limited time, Haley Marketing is offering 20% off our most powerful marketing tools for staffing and recruiting firms. That's door openers campaigns, custom integrated direct marketing, digital marketing solutions, sales automation services, and our exclusive Haley Mail content marketing system. We're limiting this offer to the first 30 companies that sign up. And if you're already a Haley Marketing client, the discount applies to new services only. So if you're ready to drive more sales in 2025, we'd love to help. Head over to bit.ly/Biley20 to learn more. That's bit.ly/Biley20, all lowercase, to learn more. All right, let's get back to the show. Mark, before I let you go, I want to give you an opportunity to share with our listeners a little bit more about yourself and what it is that you do to help the industry.
Sure. Thanks, Brad. So I've been coaching recruiters and recruiting business owners since 2001, so almost 25 years now. And I was a recruiter before that. So over the last 5 years, I've worked with over 800 different recruiting firm owners. I've also got my own podcast, The Resilient Recruiter, which I think we've had about 250 episodes of that. So in total, in recent years, I've spoken over 1,000 highly successful recruitment business owners. And that's just such a privilege. And I'm sure you find the same thing with the client work that you do. And the Take the Stage podcast is, I love learning and, seeing what successful people are doing. And so what we've created is a coaching program, but it's also a community for like-minded business owners to come together, share ideas, support each other. So what's awesome is that the type of people that we attract tend to be already successful, but who want to do even more, right? So we help people doing in the 6-figure range to get to 7 figures and beyond. And then we also have a group of entrepreneurs working with who are already in the 7-figure range who want to get to 8 figures and build a business that runs without them. And so those are 2 different programs. But what they have in common is that people are just really generous of sharing, what's working for them, their strategies, their SOPs, their templates, so it's kind of like I don't think any one person knows it all. And so by sharing ideas with a community of people who have similar goals and similar challenges, it's just such an amazing way to level yourself up. Plus, you get to hang out with people who are just awesome, and that inspires you to be better as well. So there's basically 2 ways that people might want to reach out to us. One is if you already know you want that and you think, I would like to have a coach, then you can either connect with me on LinkedIn or visit the website. But if you are not at that stage where you're looking for a coach, but you just want to constantly level yourself up, and you're obviously a podcast listener because you're listening to this podcast, then I would say go and check out our podcast, which is called The Resilient Recruiter.
And we will link to all of that in the show notes for you to make it even easier for you to get to. Mark, before I let you go, I got to run you through our rapid fire round.
Okay, let's do it.
One book that has fundamentally changed your life.
Oh, easy. Atomic Habits is, I mean, it's usually when I'm running, I'm listening to books and podcasts. So like, I could give you tons of titles, but that's the one that's been the most life-changing.
And one piece of advice that you would give to somebody just starting in staffing and recruiting, what would you tell them?
Yeah. Look, there has never been a better time to dive into recruiting and staffing from the point of view of how much information is available for, like, this podcast. Listening to the podcast you're listening to right now is a prime example of that. You know, maybe you're joining a firm that has excellent learning and development programs and you get a lot of mentorship and performance coaching and so on. Or maybe not. Maybe you're just kind of expected to get on with it, or maybe it's somewhere in between. But regardless of that, we all need to take ownership for our own learning and development. And so, you know, I think that is the key to success is, constant learning and improvement. So listening to podcasts and taking advantage of as many learning opportunities as you can.
Mark, I had a great time, man. I appreciate you coming on the show and sharing all your insights with us. Hopefully I'll run into you at a conference soon here. I know when you're back over in our part of the world, but hopefully we can run into each other again at a conference soon, and we can talk running whenever you want, my friend. I appreciate you.
Thanks, Brad. Have a great day. Thanks for the invitation. I really appreciate it.